Okay, we're doing Chapter 5, The Art of Getting Along. Life is set in the framework of human relations. Though conflicts arise between people, human beings are essentially gregarious creatures. Getting along with people is certainly a prerequisite to happiness and security because all humankind is interdependent. But even more, it is a longing of the heart that arises out of the transcendent awareness of unity. People yearn for repose in God because they innately know that they are one in spirit, and they are restless and uneasy in the face of all human conflict because they sense that beyond the appearance of separation, there is an underlying bond of divine love. Lao Tzu said that one lives in proportion to the number of points with which he or she contacts life and the world, inferring that the flow of life must go outward to form a harmonious interaction with people. One who frustrates this flow by harboring thoughts of resistance, prejudice, or animosity only half lives. This is why Jesus stressed as the great law, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, mind, and strength, and thy neighbor as thyself." Mark 12:30. Not that God will be offended if you do not love God, or that your neighbor, by his or her action, is always deserving of your love. To love God and your neighbor is to establish the points with which you contact life and the world. It is to get into the flow of love. You will invariably find it easier to get along with people when you go along with the movement of the flow. Divine order is not simply an ultimate toward which to work through some prayer technique that claims its reality. It is a fundamental truth of the universe. There is always a cosmos within every chaos. There is always enough love to go around, even within the person involved in bitter disputes. In the flow of life, there is a potential for peace and understanding and cooperation in every relationship. And as Lao Tzu says, whoever flows as life flows has solved the human equation. The art of getting along is not a psychological gimmick by which to love the unlovable and communicate with the incommunicable. It is not simply adjusting to or making the best of human perversity. The getting along relates only secondarily to the other person. Primarily, it refers to getting along with the reality of yourself with a capital S, and the determination to keep the channels of consciousness free from any and all obstructions. A woman described an experience on the subway one morning on her way to work. She boarded a car at her station and, seeing an empty seat, walked resolutely towards it. Just as she was about to sit down, another woman coming from another door knocked her flying in a struggle for the seat. The victim turned on the now seated woman in a rage. She called her an animal and other things she later regretted. The whole episode left her in a turmoil of anger at the woman and guilt at her own loss of composure. She said, "But what can I do when someone acts like this? How can I keep myself in the spirit of love and harmony when everywhere I go I run into this kind of behavior? What is wrong with the world anyway?" Can you identify with this experience? Instead of a subway, it could be a bus, or a conflict with another car while driving. It could be a conflict with someone in your family or neighborhood or a coworker in your office. Instead of a seat, it could be a promotion or a grant or a coveted prize. So let's think about it as if it were your experience. Jesus said, "What is that to thee? Follow thou me." John 21:22. This doesn't mean to be blindly indifferent to what goes on in the world around you, but it does mean that before you try to understand or even correct conditions out there, you need first to get yourself consciously established in the flow of life. It would seem obvious that the other person was out of the flow of love and harmony, but then that is his or her responsibility to live with. The incident is most certainly external, but the reaction is completely your own. There is a flow of harmony and love everywhere, whether you are aware of it or not, and whether you are consciously moving it or not. This is what the omnipresence of God means. You do not leave the presence of God or the flow of life and love when you are negative or resistant. You leave the consciousness of the presence. But you are in the flow, and the flow is in you every moment in every experience. You may not know exactly how or why you lose the consciousness and the enveloping experience of the flow, but of one thing you can be sure. If you are being pushed around, you are out of it. You may want to fight back or cry foul. You may be certain that the problem is out there, but the desire to retaliate or incriminate is a state of your consciousness. If you charge the other person is an animal, what is to be gained if you become an animal too? Two animals do not make for harmony, nor do two wrongs make a right. Jesus said, "Love your enemies, that you may be sons of your Father." Matthew 5:44, which is to say, stop resisting and start loving. Get yourself back in the flow. It is a difficult lesson, but an important one, to admit that your sudden flare-up of anger evidenced that beneath the facade of composure, there was chaos within you on that morning. Thus, you were disturbed by what happened because you were disturbable. If you had been in a more loving consciousness, you probably would have dealt with the whole thing in an entirely different way. You might have said to yourself, "I guess she was as intent on getting that seat as I was, and she might not even have seen me. Perhaps now she feels as badly about what happened as I do." An even more difficult self-admission is that because you are out of the consciousness of the flow, you may well have attracted the experience to you in the first place. This may be the reason why everywhere I go, I run into this kind of behavior. It is consciousness outforming itself. As Shakespeare says, "The world is full of griefs and graves. Who knows but that the darkness is in men?" It may seem naive and impractical, but actually, if you could realize the importance of keeping consciously in the flow of life and the danger of getting out of this flow even for one instant, you might see the whole episode on the subway in the light of what is revealed about you. If you really knew that your behavior in the face of your struggle for the seat indicated a red light warning for crisis of consciousness, you might have bowed low before the woman and said, perhaps not literally, Perhaps not literally, but at least figuratively within yourself. Thank you, for you have been instrumental in revealing to me that I am out of the flow. And then grateful for the reminder you should have taken a quiet moment to be still and know I am in the flow. Who but a Saint Francis or Gautama Buddha or a Jesus could act in such a matter? Certainly it would not be easy, but then what overcoming in life is easy? This kind of creative non-resistance may well be the only practical way to deal with such things. Any other reaction will simply perpetuate the kind of consciousness that enabled it all to happen in the first place. And that will most certainly lead to other such happenings with possibly much more serious consequences. When Jesus said, in fact, prayer for those who despitefully use you, he indicated the need to elevate your thoughts about them, but they are your thoughts that are obstructing the flow in your mind. You may feel that you have thought about the other one enough already. You haven't really thought about her at all. You have simply mulled over your erroneous concept of her. You may say, oh, people are all alike. But persons are not all alike. They are unique and individual, and with personal problems and conflicts that come when they are out of the flow. The truth is, if you could really know this person and she could really know you, it would be only love between you. For that is the reality of life which human experiences, and one's reactions to them tend to obscure. Wow, this is a really, really good chapter. So this is what I said, that you create your reality. We all create out of our reality. And we don't like to hear this, right? Now he is reminding us that when we are out of the flow, then things can happen outside and we can get hooked, right? And we have the excuses. We would say, oh, but he this or she does that, she did this, she did not do that, and that makes me angry. And this I'm talking about myself too, right? So we allowing other people's behavior, whatever is out there, to be the cause of our anger or our depression or our despair or our stress or anything that is not peace, anything that is not harmony within ourselves. So then we become the victim of what's out there, right? So he is saying that if we are really in the flow, now in the flow is not like we're in the la la land, but in the flow, in the consciousness, then we are less likely to be distracted, to get out of the flow. Because he says that even when we are out of the flow, we are still in the flow. It's only that our consciousness is out of the flow. A lot of stuff jump out for me. Let's go back. So he says that when we have conflict with other people, it's because we are not in the consciousness of love, right? And we have fights, we have arguments, we have war in the world. But if every person can really be in the consciousness of love, there will be no war, there will be no arguments, there will be no disputes, right? So we need to get ourselves back in the flow. if we are in the flow, our consciousness is in the flow, then we would only see the good in others. So when somebody makes a mistake or somebody push us or bump into us, then we will be more understanding, right? So if we are good with ourselves, if we know who we really are and we are present every moment, then when somebody bump into us, we turn around. This is just a question that you ask yourself. It's like, what is our first reaction? Do we get really mad? Or do we say, oh, what's going on? They say that when we are drowning ourselves and somebody is drowning, how can we help a person we are drowning ourselves? So just like what remember the 4 agreements with Don Miguel Ruiz, he talks about we are all being domesticated, right? We are all swimming, drowning, because and that's why when we are drowning, we cannot help ourselves, we cannot help another person. So we are disturbable easily, right? So that's why we're doing our spiritual work every day and our own spiritual practice every day, so we become less disturbable. And also, the reason we create our reality is because when we are out of the alignment with God, or out of the consciousness of love, then we started attracting similar vibrations to us. And that is actually an invitation for us to get back into the flow of love. So instead of pointing finger to that person, there are 3 other fingers pointing back at us. It's like, okay, wake up, wake up. What's going on within me? What do I need to look at? And it's always ourselves, right? It's like, okay, some part of me is out of alignment. Let me take a look. See, I like what he says, that there is a flow of harmony and love everywhere, whether you are aware of it or not, and whether you're consciously moving it or not. And that's what the omnipresence of God means, because we are always in the flow of God. God is everywhere present, everywhere available. But is our consciousness awake or not? He says, we do not leave the presence of God or the flow of life and love when you are negative or resistant. You leave the consciousness of the presence, but you are in the flow, and the flow is in you every moment and in every experience. So again, we must wake up. We must be awake to witness these. Otherwise, we get distracted and we get sucked into other people stuff, right? And then we're pointing fingers at them. But if we are in the flow, then we wouldn't get sucked in. And so one person sucked in another and disturbed another, and then so it becomes a chain of reaction. It becomes a ripple effect. But can one person wake up and say, oh, okay, that person is not very kind to me, but it's okay. I am awake and I can respond with consciousness of love. I can show the person compassion, and so that person may wake up and say, oh, that was mean the way I acted, and I didn't have to be that way. And that compassion will turn the other person around and will help wake that person up. Now then we change that ripple effect from malice to love. And the thing is that we all can do that if we are awake and aware. Now, isn't that beautiful? And that's why we create our reality with a capital R. When we are awake and aware, we are at cause, and cause creates effect, right? So there's cause and effect, but when we are at cause, then we recreate that, even though the person might be rude to us or might be disrespectful to us, but yet our mind, our eyes, we see something different because we're seeing with the eyes of God. That person might be disrespectful to us, but we see their true self. That's what he said at the end, right? He says, the truth is, if you could really know this person and she could really know you, there will be only love between you. For that is the reality of life which human experiences, and one's reaction to them tend to obscure. Right? So if we can be awake and aware and operate from the consciousness of love, then we will not see faults on the other person. And when we don't see fault on the other person can feel it because it's a vibration of love. Right? That's what Jesus was vibrating at, vibration of love. And he sees only the truth about the person.